See, I'm a beast when you hear that sound like, yeah, beat on the beat when you hear that sound like, woo. Yeah, bitch, I'm a champ, only need one round like, yeah, me, I'm a G-Ring, he in the sound like.
Mike Owens here, today joined by Brendan Fitzgerald, UFC commentator and analyst, who's in Sao Paulo, Brazil, ahead of tomorrow afternoon's card. Brendan, great to sit down and chat. How are things for you today?
Great to see you, Mike. Awesome. I always see you you're among the first to like my Instagram reels every time I post. So of course I had to make the time to chat with you.
That's because I'm on my phone 24/7 trying to get interviews and trying to post content. That's because I'm basically addicted to my phone.
Yeah.
First and foremost, what are your expectations for tomorrow night's card? Jailton Almeida and Derek Lewis in the main event?
Yeah, it's great, man. I mean, the card is good. The card is really good. Unfortunately, we lost a few fights and we lost some really high level prospects that I was looking forward to see. I was looking forward to seeing how Ismael Bonfim would bounce back against Vince Pichel. And Victor Hugo's on quite a win streak. I think he's on like a 13-fight win streak. Just won on the Contender Series. Is 24-4, I think. So I was excited to see both of those guys fight finishers. But unfortunately, we lost a couple of fights. That's just the fight game. But the ones that we do have, I mean, the main event can't miss. Jailton Almeida has only been out of the first round one time in his 5 UFC victories. Derek Lewis, we all know, is the knockout king. Caio Borralho, I'm very excited to see. Gabriel Bonfim, big time prospect, maybe turn contender if he can turn back Nicholas Dalby. So we have the goods in terms of action, and we have a lot of fighters that I think could reside in the top 10 in the next 2 to 5 years.
Looking at the challenge that Derek Lewis has in non-undefeated, but in undefeated in the UFC's Jailton Almeida's run, how much of a mammoth task do you think it is? And the Black Beast coming in on short notice, having to fly halfway across the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, the short notice thing I think matters less at heavyweight number 1. I think it matters less when you have fighters like this. Like Almeida goes to work so quickly. He's such an aggressive guy, and Derek Lewis is the same thing. That I think it's unlikely we get into rounds 4 and 5, and the gas tank of a short camp really manifests itself. But and then also like maybe it's equalized by the fact that Lewis has 30 pounds on this guy. So it's very much power versus speed, and strength versus quickness, and striking, in big shots versus a more grappling heavy attack. So I think the clash in styles will actually make it a pretty honest result, regardless of the fact that Lewis had about 3 weeks to get ready for it.
Yeah, 100%. Turn the conversation to yourself. Obviously, you'll be in action. You'll be in the booth tomorrow night. When you look back at 2023 and the events that you've covered, what are the particular highlights that spring to mind?
For 2023, I mean, early in the year, got a couple of trips. Going to San Antonio was fun. Going to Kansas City was fun. It's been a weird rhythm for me since the pandemic has ended, no matter, whenever you think that might be, because I think really we took the reins off in early 2022, and by and large, I'm still at the Apex a lot. So my normal is still living in Las Vegas, showing up to work and going home. It's a very unique environment compared to what I got used to after my first couple of years on the job, where it's like whenever I'm doing a show, I'm traveling on a Wednesday or a Thursday. I'm like embedded with the crew. I'm seeing fighters and coaches and managers in hotel lobbies. You're going out to dinner. You're getting a lot of bonding time. So it's been very unique, and it's been quite a challenge, honestly, to get used to it. I think I have, and now I have a pretty good balance. Like I'm here in Brazil. I'll do an Apex show in a couple of weeks. I'll do a show in Austin. We got some Apex shows early next year. So I just asked for the balance because I do love being home with the family more. And that's actually like what I get to do. I have a 1.5-year-old and I have an 8-year-old, and it's like great for me to be able to help my wife more and be home more and be in my own bed. After calling a show on ESPN. Show ends at around 7 o'clock local time in Las Vegas. I'm in my own bed at like 10 o'clock. I mean, it's quite different than going back to the hotel, staying up late, getting bad sleep, and being at an airport somewhere in the world on Sunday morning at 7 in the morning. So, but it has been a unique challenge for me. And I don't really have quite a rhythm of getting on the road. When I think back to 2023, the trips were great. I guess probably the biggest thing was Korean Zombie's retirement,
Yeah.
Coupled with the fact that Max Holloway got his first finish since he beat Brian Ortega. So it was like a vintage Max Holloway. And then the moment of Korean Zombie retiring, that's the highlight of my year in terms of the event profile that I've called. But, like every year, there's been some great moments when you least expect them. And, maybe we don't celebrate them like we should because it's always on to what's next.
Of course. And from a Max Holloway Korean Zombie perspective, that was about 2 p.m. UK time. So I actually got to enjoy that for once, not have to stay up and not check the phone or not get sleep. You mentioned there about kind of the juxtaposition or the difference between covering an Apex card or covering a card on the road. Obviously, the physical in terms of the travel and presumably the tiredness might be pretty obvious, but on actual fight night, is there any changes that you have to make to your role, in commentary, to kind of ratchet it up in terms of an Apex show, or to maybe to play to the crowd in an event? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think at first I tried to, and then I think now it's pretty normal. It's not really like I do anything differently at the Apex. It's more like when I'm on the road in front of a full crowd, I understand what I can do differently then. So like an Apex show to me is now the new normal. And so I've gotten used to that, and I don't try to force it. I've gotten used to the silence. I don't know. Some people say they like the quieter environment. I believe it's the minority that likes the quieter environment, but at the same time, like I've gotten okay with the fact that like sometimes they're dancing around in the octagon, they're getting their timing, they're feeling each other out, and it's quite quiet. And I'm okay with that now. Whereas before, I think if it's too quiet, you want to jump in and you just want to talk because it doesn't sound natural. And I honestly think that, and I know my boss thinks this way too, sometimes there's beauty in the silence of it. It builds up the moment so that whenever I'm going to talk next, it better be valuable or whoever. And whenever the next strike is thrown, there might be more of an impact to it because we're all kind of waiting to see what's next. And I think there's value in that. So I don't try to do anything differently when I'm at the Apex, but when I am in front of a full crowd, I acknowledge more of like, I can be a little quieter or speak less because there is more of a buzz. There's more of an energy, even in big moments. Let the crowd do some of the talking.
Yeah, 100%. Out of interest, I'm very interested to know what kind of is your preparation routine getting ready for a show? Like, what is the process that you put in place in the hours or the days before to get ready for, say, a card like Sao Paulo tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, my standard is to go over all of the fighters that are on the card early in the week and make sure that the numbers I have are correct. So, and we get sent these numbers and then I have a file system and I update them. It's just, everyone has their own system, but I like to go over every fighter on the card, make sure their age is right, make sure their record is right, their UFC record, the amount of finishes and all that, like the nuts and bolts of like, these are numbers that are facts. And I need to know these need to be correct on my file so that when I say they're 27, they are 27, they haven't turned 28, type of stuff like that. When I say it's their 12th UFC appearance, it's not like I forgot the last two and it's actually their 15th, right? So, or their 14th. So, so that's what I do early in the week. Wednesdays or Thursdays, depending on if it's an Apex event or if it's a remote event, we'll meet with a handful of fighters. So we did so yesterday in Sao Paulo. When they're at the Apex, traditionally, they're on Wednesday, where the fighters will come through and we meet virtually, like in a setting like this. But when we're on the road, we fly to town, we meet with the fighters on Thursdays. And, so we met with like 12 of the fighters that are on the card, get to, catch up with them 15 minutes ish. I get to ask them a few questions. Whoever's on the commentary gets to ask them a few questions. Producers will clarify some things. That's Thursday. Friday, I tend to save for writing a lot of the scripts and making sure the promo reads of the show and what elements are coming in the show on Saturday. Get that all buttoned up on Friday. And then on Saturday, I used to not like to do anything on Saturdays other than go and call the fight. I used to like to have everything done and just wake up on Saturday, be able to go for a walk, whatever, clear my mind, and then call the fight. And now it's a little different. Now on Saturdays, I like to reserve anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours of just like more research. Like, which fighters do I have a lot of information on? Okay, I'm good with them. Which fighters have I not really spent as much time on, or like which fighters are lacking in terms of what I know off the top of my head, and then really pour myself into them for 20 to 40 minutes at a time, and then head to the arena, call the show. Tomorrow's kind of nice in Brazil because the first fight's at like 7 o'clock local time, so I can get up at like normal time, and then I have plenty that I can do tomorrow. Not like I'll wake up and go 9 to 5 on prep and then go call the event, but I'll be able to put in maybe 3-4 hours tomorrow. Yeah.
But how much time do you think is spent on preparation or research per fighter? Like, obviously that will differ. I presume you will do more on a main event or a co-main than, say, the curtain jerker. But as an overall, a rough estimate, what would you say is the average?
It's like on per fighter, you mean?
Per fighter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a set number, because if there's a fighter that has fought 3 times in the UFC, but I haven't called one of their fights, then there's a little more for me to get into. Like, I want to maybe watch it a little bit more, refresh myself on what I remember from watching it, go into a little bit more of their story if I can, like meet them. Like, if they, there's some fighters where it's just like I haven't called it yet. I haven't called a Jailton Almeida fight yet.
Yeah.
So he obviously has like some history to go on. And so I want to kind of back that up. If there's a fighter that I've called their last 4 fights, then I don't need to spend that much time on them. Like, it's not like I need to spend 40 minutes on every fighter, because I probably called like 7 of Angela Hill's fights at this point. So like, I could catch up with her and spend 5 minutes with her and say like, what's new? But like, largely we know the story of Angela Hill. We know what type of person, fighter she is. I know her personally. I've had her on my podcast. So it's like, that type of fighter I don't need to spend an hour on. But a fighter that has fought a handful of times in the UFC that I don't know personally, maybe I need to like catch up with them. Maybe I need to ask a coach something. And then new fighters, that largely depends on what's out there. If there's a UFC debut fighter that nobody knows like they fought, maybe they're 7-0, all their fights are in Brazil, they don't speak English, and there's not a lot of news articles about them. Then it's like, that's the kind of story you tell. This is their record. This is what we're wondering, and we're all going to find out. Like, I can't know everything about every person. So that's just, you get what you can. And sometimes it's catching up with a fighter for 15, like if I'm on the call for Calvin Cater's next fight, like, how do I quantify that? I could text his coach anytime. Like, I was in touch with him last week, had Calvin on my podcast recently. I'd probably call him up and have a conversation. So if we count that as homework, then I don't know if you title that into the whole number. But in terms of like burning calories to like watch every minute of Calvin Cater's fights, like, I'm probably not going to do that. I remember,
No, it's just interested to know. And I wouldn't speak to Calvin. He's very boring anyway.
It's very much an inexact science, I guess, is the short answer.
Yeah, of course. Shout out Calvin Cater as well. The next subject I wanted to talk about was pressure, because when I'm preparing my notes and I'm getting ready to speak with you, or when I spoke to Jorge Masvidal yesterday, I feel a certain pressure, a certain responsibility to perform, and a certain responsibility to produce a good piece of content for the viewers, but also to have a conversation with yourself. Now, when you extrapolate that to being the leading voice on a UFC broadcast for 6-7 hours, I imagine the pressure is a lot more than what I'm kind of facing right now. So how do you not only deal with the pressure at the moment, but also channel that energy to perform at your best?
Yeah, I don't view it as a negative, and not that pressure is a negative, but I view it more as an excitement. Like, I think I'm just experienced enough in my career to where, like, I still have plenty to do to get ready for the show tomorrow. I have zero nerves about it. Like, there's no question in my mind that I'm going to do a good job tomorrow. Now, I'm not being like cocky and saying, I'm just going to crush it. And I got nothing, you know, I can roll out of bed and kill it. But like when you know the work that it takes and you're kind of comfortable with your system, and then you have the experience of doing it a lot, like I know by the time I'm holding a microphone with a suit on tomorrow, I'm going to feel good about what I have to say. I'm going to feel prepared. I'm going to feel backed up by our great producers and our great production team. I'm going to feel backed up by the fact that I've worked a lot with Bisping and Cruz, and I know I can lean on them, and I know how to get the best out of them. And then I'm backed up, even in this case, by a Brazilian crowd that's going to be going bonkers. So like, I have no fear or pressure of like, the other thing is this, like, I'm not playing for a job right now. Like I'm pretty settled. Like I'm pretty much a fabric of part of the team, and I feel that confidence from the higher ups that have kept me around. So let's say I don't have a great show tomorrow for whatever reason, like it's going to be a dust off and on to the next, probably without even telling me anything, unless it's a major mess up. I'll probably be harder on myself more than anyone else. So I've never really viewed it as pressure. I more view it as excitement of like, I get to do this. And especially in a rare case like this, where I haven't been to Brazil since 2020 and the Brazilian crowds are awesome. Like, and I was kind of asked this earlier this year in Kansas City, like, what kind of nerves do you get going up on stage hosting ceremonial weigh-ins? And I used to feel some nerves, because when you're a TV person and you're used to speaking to a camera, it's a whole lot different than speaking to real-time audience of, you know, 500 2,000 5,000 people that are like giving you real-time feedback. That's a different skill, and that used to, you know, make me pretty nervous even into my 30s. But now I'm just like, gosh, like I don't get to host a lot of ceremonial weigh-ins. Like I don't get to say, what's up, Kansas City, and then have a big crowd reaction because they're excited the UFC's there. That's fun to do. You know, it's fun to say, welcome Dana White to the stage, and people cheer. There's a really fun element to that, and I don't get to do it very often. So the nerves I shove right to the side, because I'm just like, I'm not going to be nervous about this. I'm going to enjoy this. And that's how I feel with whatever piece of content or show I get to host or broadcast I get to do, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a UFC show on ESPN. There's just an excitement for the love of the job. And, you know, it's like I found my right career calling, because I don't view it as pressure. I view it as like, isn't this great? I get paid to do this and support my family this way.
Yeah.
How I've always wanted to do it, you know?
I guess with that said, when you're in the moment, when you're calling a fight, I always remember the excitement after the second round of Calvin Giga Chikadze in your voice. I think it was, I have missed these fights, that probably because I've watched that fight that many times, as I often tell Calvin. But are you actually able to enjoy what you're witnessing in the moment, or are you too focused on the job at hand that you maybe the moment sometimes perhaps passes?
Yeah, I think you just find yourself in kind of a flow state in those, especially when there's good fights. You're just like so into it, and you're so like dialed in, and it's kind of like whenever you do something that you really love to do, and it feels and you feel like it goes by super quick. You know, people who love golf will know, like, let's say you're going to go play golf on like a great course, and you're just looking forward to it, and the anticipation builds, and then you tee off and it's great, and then all of a sudden you're on the 12th hole. And it's like, how did that happen? Well, it's just like, because you're just like really, like, you are enjoying it and you are present with it, but it's just like, by enjoying each moment, it just kind of passes. I do take sometimes to just kind of sit back, look around, depending on where we are in the fight or in the broadcast. Obviously in the fight, you got to stay dialed in, like you really do. Because once the round ends and you're super excited, like you're probably getting some instruction from producers on a promo that you're going to read. They're communicating to, you know, us on which replays are coming and who's going to talk through the replays. And then you're trying to listen to the corner advice in each corner as best you can too, so that you can say, especially if we're in commercial, here's what Tyson told Calvin Kattar between rounds 2 and 3, and then trying to tee up Bisping, what are you looking for now, type of thing. So you're just like, so you are dialed in. So in that way, it's still fun, and I still enjoy it, because you're just very much in the present moment. You're forced to be in the present moment, but it's not like, isn't this great? Isn't this awesome? Wow, this is really cool. It's just like, no, like I got to know this. But that to me is part of the fun part. So it's a little.
Is there a fighter who's you've never covered a fight of that you maybe wish you would like to in the future? Is there one that particularly sticks out?
You know, I guess like in my role, I don't call pay-per-views, so I don't really get title fights. So there are a handful of fighters that are like almost exclusively on pay-per-view cards, especially post-pandemic, where the Apex shows were not, it's kind of a different business model for as long as the Apex kind of sticks around.
Yeah.
Like we're not, whereas before, Justin Gaethje would headline a fight night in Vancouver. I called that one. In Nebraska, I called that one. Now it's like, he's very much a title challenger and a main event pay-per-view guy now. But even before, when he wasn't, instead of sticking him third from the top on a pay-per-view card, we would headline him because you want to sell tickets.
Yeah.
And now it's like, we're not putting Justin Gaethje in the Apex main event. Not going to happen. Michael Chandler, not going to,
Yeah, there's those guys who are that pocket of main events, or Calvin and Rob sit in that quite nicely as well.
Well, and then like, yeah, exactly. And so it just depends on a lot of things. I guess the easy answer is never called a Mike Chandler fight because he came over in 2021, I guess it was. And he's very much a pay-per-view card guy, but I'm a big fan of Mike Chandler. I know him. I know, like, I've met his wife and like, just like love them. Like, they're just the very nice people. And I love what Chandler's all about, hard work and nose to the grindstone, and then the way that he fights. So I'd love to call a Mike Chandler fight at some point. I'd love to call a Colby Covington fight. I think to me, that's one of the things that makes our sport so much fun is like the buildup and like the animosity, and then they settle it with a fight. Like, to me, say what you want about Colby and whether you love him or whether you hate him, even if you hate him, you should like that part of the game. That's like part of why we like this. So, yeah, off the top of my head, I could name you a bunch that I haven't, just because their profile was so elevated. Never called Connor, never called Nate Diaz, never called the Tony Ferguson fight. So different things like that, where it's like, I'm not like, my career won't be complete until I call one of their fights, but those are the names where it's just like, man, would love to be included or involved in events with those.
Couple more questions from me, and as always, I really appreciate your time. 2nd of December, our paths may potentially cross in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, they'll definitely cross. If you make the trip, I'll be there. Well,
I'm coming halfway across the world, so I'd like to think you could give me 5 or 10 minutes to a quick hello. But nevertheless,
about it.
Nevertheless, Beneil Dariush, Arman Sarukian in the main event, also a 5-round co-main event between Dan Hooker and Bobby Green. Just your reaction to that overall card on December 2nd.
So love it. Love the card. Those are two, basically we get like double main events, or like, double main event quality fights. Have I called a Dan Hooker fight? I don't know if I've called a Dan Hooker fight. No, I must have at some point. I don't know. I can't think of a Dan Hooker fight that I was on the play-by-play call for, but he obviously brings it. Bobby Green is a lot of fun, and he's having this rise similar to Jorge Masvidal in 2019, when he was very much this veteran guy, had some fans on his side. It's like an OG fighter, like an undefeated in the streets type of guy too, where you knew he was a real fighter. He wasn't coming at it from this proper martial arts or combat sports background. It was just like, dude, like, I'm a fighter. And beats Tony Ferguson, flash knockout of Grant Dawson. If he can get past Dan Hooker in an instant classic, tell me Bobby Green isn't like thriving in the rankings and potentially is on that Masvidal path, right? Of like, gosh, let's get this guy some big fights. He's a character. He's fun. Flips into the octagon, spits water in the air when he wins. Like, all the elements are there for Bobby Green to become a big star this far into his career. So that's a great fight. And then Sarukian I've called, and I don't know if I've called a Dariush fight, but again, like, to me, the best weight class consistently is top 15 at lightweight. Like, there's no bad fights. And now with the new breed of guys coming in, like Sarukian, it sets up so many different fresh matchups that are awesome. Look at Sarukian and Gamrot in the Apex. That was one of the best fights in the Apex so far. So like just highest like level of skill, and the fact that we're going double 5-rounders, and then the rest of the main card. This is the Austin card as it sits right now is maybe the deepest fight card that I will have ever called in this 5 years I've been calling UFC events, because it's like Sean Brady's on it. Like I can't remember off the top of my head, but you go down the 6 fights on the main card and I'm like, holy smokes. Like this is definitely the deepest fight card. And it has like it won't have it just has the cadence of a pay-per-view with the 2 5-rounders. I guess there's an extra fight. There's a lot of fights that night. It's like 14.
It effectively has four potential main events. When you think about Font and Figueiredo could be a main event, and Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum is easily a main event. Gastelum's obviously had previous main events, so I think that's sometimes the way to characterize fight nights is how many fights are a feasible main event.
Exactly. And so we want that event to be a large event. It's the first one in December, and that, that's our Stuart Scott Memorial Night, if you will, on ESPN, the sports anchor who passed away of cancer. And so we'll tell stories of UFC related people that have battled cancer. And so it's a special night for the UFC. Like it's a heavy night, but it's become an annual tradition since we've joined ESPN, and it's one that I haven't called yet. So I'm very grateful that like they think of me to be able to call that show. Obviously, it's an arena show, and then it's a big card, and it's a high profile show that's on ESPN, and John has done that one exclusively in the past few years. And so the fact that I'm able to get one of those is great, because I'm not the type where I'm gonna call, I want to do a main event. It's time, or I want to do a pay-per-view. It's time for me to do it. Like I'm not that guy. Like I'm in the room. I'm in the quarterback room with the other play-by-play guys, the 2 Johns. And I love the chemistry that we have. I like our whole broadcast team. It's like, I love the role that I have, but to be able to get one of these, that's a higher profile than some other fight nights is, I'm appreciative that I get the opportunity this year.
I love it. Last one from me. Obviously, you do a lot with the commentary gig. I know you also have the Fitz Nation podcast. I know you kind of regularly upload to that. I think the latest episode was with Vicente Luque on a walking across Florida Beach, which I'm looking forward to watching. But past that, what are the goals that you've put in place for the next 12 months? What do you want to accomplish by the end 2024?
Oh, that's a good question. Haven't got to December yet, Mike, so I haven't really put together the.
I'll give you 2 more months. I'll give you 14 months to get.
I think I was coming at things from the wrong perspective for the past couple years, really. Like I said, like it took me a long time to wrap my head around being grateful for the Apex set, for how my job has changed since the pandemic came into our lives. And at first I wasn't belly aching about it at all, because I wasn't missing out on anything. Like in 2020, we're doing events, like everyone's doing events empty. And then like when our high profile events got out on the road and I just wasn't able to kind of take part in those, and I'm just like, what the heck, man? But I really feel like I've come around from a mindset perspective on looking at it the right way and being grateful for like the many, many, many blessings that my job has given me, that I get to have because of the current state of the scenario of being at home with my family at this point in our lives. And then with the podcast, I think I was trying to chase results instead of enjoy the process. I guess that's the biggest thing, is like, I'm going to really take the next couple of months to try to dial in what processes I enjoy in the areas that I'm trying to make progress, and fall in love with those, instead of chase a number of, I want my YouTube channel to get this many subscribers. Like that's not the right way to go about it, because there's always shortcuts around those sort of things.
Yeah.
And you'll get tempted by the shortcuts if you don't want to put in the right work.
Yeah.
And so I'm figuring out like what work that I truly want to do and what work I truly don't want to do. Cause like you want to chase everything,
Yeah.
right?